Hey, this is Kahja Elliott, Bronx born and raised, ATL made, Bay Area becoming, and this is the As Told By podcast. Hey, we're back with a new episode of the As Told By podcast. This is Kahja Elliott, host of the As Told By podcast, and if you've been listening since the beginning, you are going to recognize today's guest because they interviewed me in season 1 for the Who Is This Chick Anyway episode. So I had to turn the tables on her and interview her today. So shout out to Kendra Williams. You are back on the As Told By podcast.
I am back. You cannot get rid of me.
Oh, why would we ever want to?
I can think of 1 or 2 reasons, but I'm so glad you can't think of any right now.
Listen, I told you that episode is still to this day my 3rd highest rated or highest number of downloads, number 3.
All right.
So you did your
they're
thing.
Taking us with them too.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad you're back. So just a little bit about Kendra. Kendra's a Bay Area native. She has a production company. She has done some work around production of films and documentary shorts. And Kendra and I met through corporate circles. Mm-hmm. And that was part of what I wanted to talk to her about today because, you know, there's been some interesting things happening this year in corporate circles, and Kendra has had some experiences around the interesting things happening in corporate circles. So I thought that it was a really dope conversation to talk about what happens when you wake up one day and the whole script gets flipped.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it is interesting is not necessarily the word that I would use, but we can start there.
Okay, we can start with interesting. So, first of all, how are you doing today?
Today, I am feeling very thankful to be here. Mm-hmm. Thankful that you have asked me to share a little bit of the latest chapter of my story. And I'll just leave it there. I'm just thankful that you see what I have been through as valuable enough to be told. So I'm holding on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what I think is so important about it is because what we're going to talk about hit you in the career area, but this is the same thing that happens to people in relationships and marriages and businesses and all these different things where the pivot becomes, you know, the pivot you didn't ask for, but you got.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So look, we're going to start at the beginning. So I said that I know you through corporate circles. Fill in the blanks if you can, and if you can't, don't worry about them. But I know
there were
you
computers
through
and desks,
right? There
and
were
meetings,
things,
and we'll leave it there.
and calendars, and all the things. So you get up one day. Just take us from the beginning. I'll start it off with you wake up one day.
Actually, do you mind if I take it to the night before?
I'm
going to take it to the night before
Yes.
because what is really especially fun about this story is that I was up until 2 a.m. On Thursday night, Friday morning, and I was working on a project. I was working on a schedule for a summit that I was going to be attending the following week. And I went to sleep and had a meeting early the next morning, so Friday morning. I got up at 6:30. Logged onto my computer and went to refresh my email, and a message pops up. I couldn't tell you what the message said still to this day because I didn't read the whole thing. I was just mostly shocked by the bits that I was able to comprehend from this message, and it essentially said that I had lost my job. And I didn't understand because, like I said, I was up late working on this project, and I had things I needed to do. And I thought, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be late to this meeting. And I thought this must be a mistake. But after refreshing 6-7 times, I started getting text messages from some of my colleagues asking if I was okay. And then I started to put it together. Oh, this isn't just me. This is actually happening. This is many people. And so, yeah, that day was a bit of a blur. But then, over the next week, it started to come together. I was meant to be traveling to Dublin for this summit. And I was getting messages about my travel. Are you coming? Are you coming? Because not everybody knew that I had been impacted.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was one of the strangest, kind of, and I don't mean for this to sound dramatic, but we'll talk more about what I think this feels like, but it was earth shaking. So much of my identity and so much of what I was doing and who I was wrapped up in this work that I was doing. And so it really rattled me to my core. Yeah.
Wow. A lot there. Were you panicking? Were you just kind of frozen in what the hell and watching, I remember around the time lots of companies were in this space at the beginning of the year, and you would be scrolling on LinkedIn and you would see all those green open to work, right? And people's accounts, detailed accounts of, I've been impacted, and it reminded me so strangely. So I'm not drawing a firm comparator between these two things, but it reminded me in the immediate days after 9/11, when you would go on and people would be, I'm looking for this person, and it just was like account after account of people in these really sad situations. And so were you panicking? Were you kind of combing through that information to see who else you knew that was impacted? What were those first couple of days like as you started to wrap your arms around, oh shit, this is really happening?
That didn't really start to happen until the following week that I was open to hearing other people's stories. I spent the first few days really just holed up at home on the couch, just letting the reality sink in, looking at my suitcase that had already been packed to go on this trip, looking at my calendar on my phone that no longer had my corporate account, right? My email not being able to get, just really not fully wrapping my head around the reality of it, but piece by piece kind of seeing it come into fruition, I guess. So I really was just kind of in the dark. And it was, it wasn't until the following week that I started to accept it and start to think beyond myself and my own circumstance, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was 2017. The first time this ever happened to me. I was working for Visa at the time. And, they had been going through a shift where a lot of the functions where I worked were being transitioned to another state. And they weren't like, hey, do you want to move to the other state? They were filling the roles in the other state. And I remember somebody giving me a quasi heads up, next week probably ain't gonna be your best week. And if you say anything, I'll deny everything. I was oh, okay, word, thank you.
Yes, shout out to that person.
Yeah, somebody put the bug in my ear, and so when I got that email that morning, I knew what it was, right? Because had I not, I probably would have like not flipped the table, but like I would have had a reaction,
Sure.
right? Had I been caught off guard, but at least I was a little bit prepared. But when I think back to that, to like the first things I did immediately, and it's so funny how when things happen, you revert back to versions of yourself that you just like, I thought we had come and gone from that. They gave me that news at 10 a.m. I immediately drove to the social services office and put in a food stamp application immediately. Because I had the separation letter, and I was like, before any severance money hits my account, this letter says I am not working. Yes. So I went immediately and put in for the food stamps.
Yeah.
So like I was in that immediate mode of let me try to secure my basics.
Right.
So as you were taking it in, what were like the first things you were thinking as far as let me try to secure my basics?
Yeah, like I said, it took me a while to really let it sink in. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I really thought I could talk my way out of it somehow. Like, this has to be wrong, right? Like, as far as I could see, even the week following when I was combing through all the LinkedIn, journal entries is what I'd probably liken them to, was that nobody else from my team had been impacted. And so I thought there must be some mistake, or somebody's after me. That's what it is. And I'm going to find out who, and I'm going to fix this. Right. I don't know why I thought that, but, so it took me a while before I started to think about, okay, what's next? And when I finally got there, I really started to think of this as actually whatever higher powers plan to get me the hell out of there. And so I started to think about, okay, how could I pivot? Because what I didn't want to do is hyper focus on getting into another corporate job. Because that's what I've been taught, right? That's what I've been taught my whole life was, if you find yourself in a situation like this, or if you are even planning to leave a job, you have another job lined up. Yeah. And so I knew that I would have to fight myself wanting to go down that path, right? So I really was more focused on, okay, what are the lessons from this that I can take and kind of channel into a new life, because I don't want to go back there. Yeah. We were fortunate, those of us who were impacted enough to get a pretty generous, quote, package. Yeah. And so I knew I had a little bit of breathing room. Okay. Yeah. So I wasn't really worried about how I was going to feed myself and, all of that. It was more about, okay, how am I going to find who I am now? Oh, we're going to get in that. All right. Well, we're about to get to that. And, one of the things I noticed in talking to, some people who have had similar experiences this year, some of them I noticed, some friends, like a feeling of kind of even, I don't want to call it shame, but for lack of a better term, I'll call it like shame for some odd reason, even though they, you were selected through some process, right? Sure. But I can see where it could hold some shame, for some strange reasons. So did you feel that, or was part of being in this group of thousands of people that were impacted, was there like hiding in the number? Well, it's all of us. It wasn't just me. So it didn't feel personal. It felt so personal. There was part of me that wanted it to be like a little bit of like, I want there to be a story. I want there to be a story. I don't want to just be a number. Right. So I spent a lot of time trying to find patterns, trying to find links. And I never found one, but it still felt very personal, and it felt personal because of some of the experiences that I had while I was in the company. And it wasn't all, butterflies and rainbows and everything, but I was always I always gave it everything that I had, and so to lose it in such a drastic way, and thoughtless, careless way, in my opinion, it felt very personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's no hiding. It's in, I was going to say it's in the paper. I'm telling my age. It's online. It's the lead story in the news. It's this. People are calling. Is it you? Was it you? And so I could see where it's like, all right, I need y'all to just back up for a second. Yeah.
I tried, and I kind of tried to hide for a little bit.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. It was, it just felt, it felt personal, and it felt, but it felt lonely.
Even in the thousands.
Yes, because like I said, my team wasn't impacted.
Yeah.
And so many, teams around mine weren't impacted. So it really felt like they found me. They found me in the corner somewhere, and they said that one.
Wow. I can see that. Pinpointed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kendra, part of what just came up organically when we did the episode in season 1, and we talked about how, working in certain industries, it starts to bleed into all the areas of your life with all these rich different things that come with working in certain industries. And we talked almost flippantly, right, about like what happens when that's no longer what you want, but what happens when they don't want it anymore, when they're the ones who make the shift. So like thinking back to that conversation you and I had, what are your thoughts about the role that branding plays in people's career decisions? And how do you, thinking back to when you first took that job, how did the branding of it play a role in you getting there? Like I hear people say a lot of times that they came to a job because that company rang their bell. Whether they liked the job, wanted the job, was good at the job,
Right.
the job was above them, beneath them, whatever.
Sure.
You specifically called,
Yes.
and so I answered. And so I'm like, that ain't nothing but a branding job. I'm like, that is branding and marketing at its finest, that you weren't even looking for a job and they came and knocked on your door and you was like, yep, it's you the one.
And that this particular company, it couldn't be any truer, right? Because when this company calls, you drop everything for this company, right? And, before I started there as a full-time employee, I had worked there as a vendor a couple years prior. And being a vendor, you don't get to partake in all of the goodies that a full-time employee does. But I saw it and I wanted all of it. And so, yes, when this company called, I said, I am sorry to my boss. I am sorry to my colleagues. I'm sorry to all of these unfinished projects that I have on my desk, but I got to go. Exactly. Exactly. That's what I was thinking of. I'm sorry to this man. Anyway, so, listen, the PR, the marketing teams, the storytellers at this company are exceptional. They're so good at what they do. And there are just enough people in this company who are genuinely experiencing what they are selling to make you believe that that's what you are going to get when you walk through the doors. But the reality is that the perks, as wonderful and as rich as they are, certainly in my experience did not outweigh the other side of the experience. And so that's part of why when this happened and I had an opportunity to really let it sink in, it started to feel like a gift. It started to feel like, okay, Kendra, you were actually never going to get your ass off the chair and leave. You were never going to walk out that door because you had these perks. You might have been in pain. You might have been tired. You might have been overworked, but you actually were never going to leave. So let's think about where you go now.
Yeah. That, you know, I'm laughing because I've looked at my next question, which is so apropos. Thinking back over all of your experiences being there, do you feel like you had let yourself down by staying as long as you did?
That's so rude.
Sometimes after it's done, again, like I was like, this could be applicable to a marriage, and like if a trifling man leaves you,
listen,
and then you look back and you're like, what the hell was I even doing?
Not you killing me softly with my song. Stop.
I should have been gone.
Yes.
Like she said,
the answer is yes. Listen, so I probably should have been out the door in 2020, the beginning of 2020. Some stuff went down, and it was kind of in a public way, and I was too bruised. My ego was too bruised. I was too embarrassed to leave. I thought I had to save my reputation. And so I took some time and I came back and I went back to rebuild my image. And I think the lesson in that is, you know, sometimes when you feel like your ego has been bruised, it is actually, it's actually a sign that you're in the wrong space and that you are meant to find where you're meant to be. And my job was to find that space and to find a space that would celebrate me instead of living for everybody else's validation, right? And I didn't see that then. I went back and I thought I gotta go get these people to fall in love with me again, because that's all I knew. I mean, I had been groomed for this my entire life. I was both my parents were in tech in Silicon Valley, and they were both really great at what they do. And this is not any shade to them, right? They gave us so much opportunity, but I think what I was taught, whether it was on purpose or not, was that, you know, you're meant to make these people around you comfortable so that you can keep this job and you can live a comfortable life, right? It was never about finding a career and finding an environment, finding people who will celebrate you for who you are. It's, you got to shift. You got to shift your shape to fit in with these people. And so that's what I went back to do. And I never found it. Yeah. I never found it.
People, I have friends and, just people, they say things all the time around jobs, I got an offer from another company and I might be interested in it, but, I got these projects going on. I don't want to leave them short-staffed. Or I'm going to put in, I'm maxed out on my vacation time, and, I should just take 30
Right.
days off because I definitely got the time, but,
Right.
I don't want to leave the team hanging.
Right.
And then you see the priority paradigm, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Everyone has their priorities, and individuals should have their priorities as well,
Right,
right? I'm
right.
being so selective with my words.
You are.
Individuals should have
finesse. The finesse.
oh, the HR training of it all. Individuals should have their priorities as well. And I think lots of times the priorities intertwine absolutely as they should, but keeping in mind a business's business is the business.
Yes.
Your business is your business.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to explore, other options, people taking time off, it's just amazing. Even, after we've seen what's happened in industries, it's almost like you get rocked back to sleep and you get back in a mentality and it's like, no, that happened.
Right.
Right. But now that it's happened, right? It's happened. It's done. So now where are we? So you are familiar with the good old paradigm of time, attention, money.
I am.
I know that you are. And the importance of them being in that specific order: time, attention, money.
Yes.
So now that you, by choice or by force, own your own time, right?
Yes.
I don't even know what that feels like. As it came out of my mouth, I was like, you're such a slave. But now that you own your own time, how are you applying that paradigm of time, attention, money to whatever you're doing now or whatever you're going to be doing next?
Ooh. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I'll tell you that it's something that I have really struggled with, because this is the first time in my life where I have really had to face that where I've really had to face that order, right? Because for so long, money has been at the forefront. And so that is why I was willing to stick it out, right? And now that I see that truly time is my most valuable resource, I'm having to come to terms with what that looks like, how I spend it while wanting money. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, because you didn't, leave and go to the monastery. Like, you still are in
This
old Bay Area of all places. So money is still on the table as a factor.
It is. But the reality is that the job market being what it is, my job search hasn't bore the fruit of, of more money. So all I really have is this abundance of time and attention, right? And so I'm having to get creative about how I spend it. One of the things that has really challenged me is my time and attention being spent on myself.
How do you mean?
I don't want to do it.
Oh.
I don't want to do it.
What you mean by that?
So when you've been on this conveyor belt, right, and you've been in the pursuit of money, and you've been in the pursuit of validation from other people, that becomes your air. That becomes what you live for.
I see.
And so you stop paying attention to yourself. There was a point, and this is going to get real. There was a point after this all went down where I thought to myself, oh my God, I would rather die than take care of myself and spend time with myself. This is wild.
Really?
This is wild. This is too much. This is too much. I'm too much, right? And that's what happens when you don't spend the time and attention on yourself. You forget about yourself. And then when you have to meet yourself again, it's like, whoa.
By accident.
Okay.
Right.
Who's that? Who's that? Because that's not like the diplomatic, quirky, awkward black girl, tech girl that I had molded myself into, right? So that's been a challenge. I mean, it's been fruitful in a lot of ways, and it's been beautiful in a lot of ways too. Don't get me wrong. I think that's the most important thing. That should be our business. Our business should be meeting ourselves and spending the time and attention on ourselves first. But it's been a challenge.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge for real.
Has this felt, I'm sure in the beginning, no, but as time has gone on, has this become something that feels freeing to you?
Yes, in moments it feels like I said, like a huge gift. Where, you know, I remember when I first took time off in 2020, I felt like, oh, I get to do whatever I want. I get to create. I get to get back in touch with the things that I love. I get to set no schedule.
You get to be off a calendar.
I get to be off a calendar. I get to play. I get to like rediscover music and writing and all this, you know, all this dope stuff that I had put down, right? But I had the safety net of going back to my job, right? And now it's like all of the freedom without a safety net.
All the freedom without a safety net.
So I have to hold both, right? The reality is it's this gift of freedom without the checks coming in.
It's weird when you think about the checks seemingly representing, boy, we just talked about, I just was in a conversation about this recently, faux freedom. And the money making you feel free because you can just go in your account. There's commas. I'm going here. I'm jumping on a flight. I'm over here. You know, I would like to have this here. I want to have this experience next month. And so it feels like freedom, but in a lot of ways, this is the real freedom because you get to make it up.
Yeah. You do. But at my big old age, having,
I love that phrase.
I know,
Joe
right?
Big
It's wild because I never learned what to do with the freedom and how to build. This was set out for me from the beginning. And so I was just following the script, and now I don't have one. And so I'm without even the imagination to build.
Wow. It's like that.
It really is. It really is. I'm over here looking at a lot of my friends who are creators who have been hustling for years. And I'm like, can I bottle that up and get some? How can you teach me a master class? Like where's the boot camp?
The art of not It's like, you don't care? It's like, no. And I haven't cared for probably about 8 years now. It's like, how did you get there?
How?
Yeah.
And so, it's free, it's freedom. It's in one way really exciting to be looking at a blank slate, but it's also like, okay, what do people do with a blank slate? And I've been so funny. Like, people get so annoyed with me because I'm like, tell me what the first step is. And they're like, just do it. I'm like, do what?
Right.
Let's start at 1A.
Let's do a drop down on
right.
one.
Exactly.
Do what? Because it's the societal conditioning. You know how they mail those things out? What is it called? Social Security Administration. They mail out these like quarterly statements or biannual statements, right? And the statement is essentially to tell you, if you were to go on SSI today,
right.
If you were disabled, you would get this amount of money. And if you were to die today, this is what your beneficiaries would get. But there also is a section where it lists out your earnings for every calendar year that you worked. And I remember getting one of those. I don't know if they send them out anymore because I don't remember seeing one recently. I don't think they do, but I have them. And I remember looking at one, this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and being like, yo, you have worked every year since you were 14 years old. You have not missed a year. From 14 to now, you have been working every single year. So the conditioning, if someone takes that off you, even if it's a job where you're having experiences you don't want to have, you're not growing, and you're really just there kind of riding the rails, and to have that taken off of you and be thinking about, oh, this must be a mistake, or, well, now I don't know what to do with the time. It's crazy when you think about it. I don't know what I would do with my time either.
Listen.
I'm like, okay, I don't know the hog tie people. What you want me to do?
Right. I mean, honestly, okay, so there's something about waking up in the morning and then that's it. That's it. Kahja, that's it.
I'm up.
You're just up. Nobody cares. Nobody's like, meet me at this place at this time. You need to do X, Y, Z. Like, no, you just wake up and look around and you're like, oh, so it's morning.
Yeah.
Now what? And I've tried experimenting with different routines and stuff and whatever, and it's cool, but there's nothing like having a place to go or a meeting on your calendar. In my experience, because that's what I've been doing.
Mine too. That damn calendar.
Free yourself.
Realize, just wow. Okay, so that could be a whole other conversation, right? But now being on the other side of it,
yes.
What are 3 things that you would tell someone who is suddenly finding themselves on the receiving end of significant, unexpected change? Be that relationships or career or whatever, right? You don't always see change coming, and then it's here. And as you've had to navigate that, what are some things where you're like, make sure you do and don't do and do?
Okay, so I would say the very first thing is be honest and real with yourself about the fact that what you're experiencing is grief. I can't even tell you why I picked up this book, but I picked up the Grief Recovery Handbook. And I can't remember who the author is off the top of my head, but and in it talks about how grief is the result of anything in your life that you have loved changing. So that is a relationship. It could be, a romantic relationship, a friendship. It could be someone passing, and it can be a job. And they say that in this book, right? They talk about how that is one thing that we don't do a good job of recognizing as like a catalyst for grief. And so that, I think I had picked that up in December and started reading it. Mm-hmm. And then this happened. And so
right before this happened.
Yeah. And so this happened in January.
Wow.
And so I at least felt like I could name what I was experiencing, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say that's the first thing, and get serious about learning what you're going to do to process grief, because we also, like as a culture, do not acknowledge it. Keep it moving and keep it to yourself, right?
Yes.
Nobody wants to feel that. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to hear about that, especially from a Black woman. But that's another story for another day. Mm-hmm. And so that's number one. Number two, I would say share that with people around you. It's counter to everything that we've been taught, like I just said, but I think it's really important when something like this happens to have at least one person in your life who can tell you who you are, because you're going to forget. That was a big one for me. Like I said, so much of my identity was wrapped up in going to work every day and giving it everything until I fell asleep at night. And so I didn't know who I was without it. And I couldn't, if somebody asked me, what do you do? I would just stare at them blankly. Like, currently nothing. Currently,
my best.
I sleep in.
Right.
So having someone in your life who can tell you who you are in their eyes, someone that you trust, someone who loves you and cares about you, or, a therapist who loves you and cares about you at the very least. And then I think the third thing is to just be brand new. That's something that I also struggle with. I am someone who doesn't like to even speak until I feel like I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I don't like to appear like I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't know what I'm doing. And this is all very new to me, and it's I've had to get really comfortable with not knowing what the hell I'm doing. And so I would say become brand new, suck at it, and open your mind to learning, not just about yourself, but learning new things, new skills, new hobbies, because that might be how you get to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, those three things: name, get familiar with, know your grief, call on somebody or somebodies to tell you who you are, and then be new.
Be new.
Yeah.
Did people show up for you the way you hoped they would?
I did not let them. I did not let them, and that's why I put that in the top three, because you need to let people tell them, ask them, beg them if you have to. I think that we, as a culture, can be pretty proud, and for a lot of good reasons, right? Because we are it, but there are moments when we each feel like we are not. And I think we would be a lot better off if we asked those around us to be there for us when we have those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watching this happen to people, thankfully I didn't get impacted, but having to be in the aftermath of it, right, came with it's, definitely not comparable, but it came with its own thing.
Yeah.
To have to watch it happen to people, it didn't happen to you. There just was a lot of unpacking around that to do as well. And, in no way, universe, life, God, spirits, divinity, creator, am I calling this onto myself? But
No.
but I thought
To be clear,
do
not come knocking on my door.
But I did have the thought that as I had to keep in mind a baseline. I actually said it to myself. I have too many people that love me. I'm never going to spend a night on the street, and I'm never going to starve. Thank God I ain't never going to starve. One more time. I ain't never going to starve.
Never.
But if that's the baseline, then I'm like, I don't even want to let the chips fall where they may. Again, I am not calling this into my life. I'm just saying, understanding that there is a baseline, right? That you can rebuild from if and when you need to rebuild. So, even before this happened to you, you had your own creative endeavors you were doing. What space are those things now holding in this time that you have? What have you been creating? What have you been working on?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I love talking about creating. It's so important to me. I've had to reimagine what creativity looks like. So much of the projects that I had been working on and what I had been building was being funded by this job. And so that obviously has changed drastically. But it was what I had already created, the foundation for something new that wouldn't require, right, the same level of financial investment. And so I have just been experimenting with different things. One thing that has come out of this is I've been writing a lot. And I'm working on a book. And and Black and Brown in the Middle was the beginnings of my story. And now I am telling more of my story as a grown woman. And so I'm thankful that this time allows me to explore who I am today. When I was working on, the docuseries, my story was more focused on how I got to this point. And so it was a lot about how I grew up and, the things that happened that really formed my identity as the token Black woman, Black girl, in all of the spaces that I was living. And now I'm exploring what type of woman I am now that I'm no longer the token. And that's another part of this gift, is that I've been able to release that identity. I don't have to be the token Black girl anymore. And, it's funny because this experience of suddenly having change that I didn't choose is kind of a theme in multiple ways. We talked about relationships being one, and that's something that I have experienced. And one thing that has come out of this is this idea of being disposable. I think our culture makes it really easy for us to dispose of each other when we no longer feel like we're getting what we want out of each other. And that's kind of what it felt like to wake up that morning, like I was being disposed of. And I've felt that in relationships too. So that's a theme that I'm really exploring right now. What does it mean to be specifically a disposable Black woman? What does it mean to be a disposable Black girlfriend? What does it mean to be a disposable human? And that's part of what I'm writing about. Also just the experience of love and grief and hair. being a Black woman and what that means and how those are all wrapped up together. So that's the project that I'm working on right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see how that evolves, because I think it's a story that so many of us have. And I want to see how I can turn this into an opportunity for more people to heal and create sustainable relationships, and not dispose of each other.
Love it.
Yeah.
So where can people keep up with your writing and the evolution of the book and all things Kendra?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I was not expecting
Expect
to put this out there, but I think it's time. So, Black and Brown in the Middle still exists in the ether somewhere. So blackandbrownitm.com is the website for the business. And then, oh my goodness, if
are we about to get exclusive info?
If you must.
We must.
If you must find me, I am at kendravalerie.com. And that's where you'll find some of my writing. It's new. I'm very nervous. I'm sweating right now. I'm sweating. But it's time. So kendravalerie.com. You can find me also on all the socials there. Meet Kendra V on Instagram, or if you want to get weird, All Smiles Kendra is my personal page. And then eventually we will revive the Black and Brown in the Middle Instagram as well. So that's how you can find me.
Love it. Big things popping. I'm glad you came back.
Me too.
To the As Told by podcast.
My gosh, I hope I didn't get too real.
No, this is listen. We want people to get real, right? What an evolution and what a story of growth from when we talked before.
Yeah.
And when we are talking now. So I'm so glad to have had you come back here. Thank you again. Kendra has been such a supporter, not only of the As Told by podcast, but of K in the Bay curated events as well. So really thank you to you for the time and for all of your support throughout, right? All of your support.
I'm happy to do it. Happy to do it. You're doing big things, and I'm so thankful that I get to be a part of it.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, if you want to keep up with me in between episodes, you can find me at Kahja versus Kahja. That's KAHJA_VS_KAHJA. And if you want to keep up with food content creation, food and travel content, and all the things I do, and I'm running around not doing the podcast, you can keep up with me at Hey K in the Bay on Instagram. That's this week's episode of the As Told by podcast. Peace.
All right. Peace.